Brewers log, April 9th, 2022. So tonight, first thing I did was I took the 2 bottles of cider that we racked last week and I put them into the refrigerator to cold crash so that hopefully I can bottle them tomorrow. And then I started making more ginger honey cider. I decided to do things a little bit different this time. I had bought this grater to grate cheese, and I decided that I would actually try using its attachment. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. So it has an attachment that just basically slices. So I thought I would use the slicer to slice up my ginger instead of chopping it up and trying to make it nice and fine. I think it came out fairly well. I guess you really can't see it as well now, but it was able to slice up with the majority of it into smaller chunks, and what didn't get really sliced up was broke it up fairly well. So I have 8 ounces of ginger in there. I ended up using 1.5 gallons of cider. I had 2 different ciders from Lewisburg. I thought they were both old-fashioned, but I realized after I dumped the other 1/2 gallon in, one of them is a Honeycrisp and the other is an old-fashioned, but should be close enough. I bought them at the same time, and I bought them specifically for this reason, is that a lot of times I only use about 1.5 gallons when making 2 gallons of cider, even if I'm doing it in 2 jugs. So when I saw that I could get 1/2 gallon of it, I decided I was going to try that to see how well that would work. And as you can see, it filled it up almost perfectly to where I would normally have filled the jug. So I leave it a little bit of headspace in it, so when it really starts bubbling and foaming, and it doesn't blow the lid off or foul the airlock in it. So I think that came out fairly well. I use my standard SO4 yeast that I've been using for quite a few years now that I found works fairly well. There is 1 ounce of pectin enzyme in there, or not 1 ounce, a teaspoon of pectin enzyme and 2 teaspoons of yeast nutrient that are in the jug too. The other thing I did tonight is that I realized I had several bottles of Nate honey that had just maybe about 1 inch at the bottom of each of these jars that hadn't gotten used or didn't come out or was on the walls and have settled down. Most of it was fairly hardened, so what I ended up doing was taking a cup of cider, putting it in the microwave for a minute or 2, and then I poured the cider into these jugs, shook them up, would pour them back into the measuring cup, the 2-cup measuring cup I'm using right here, and I would keep shaking them up until everything was loose, dump them back into the measuring cup until I had 2 cups. And once I had that, I poured it in, did another cup of cider, poured it back in these jugs, and kept shaking them up until I had loosened everything, and I had at least 2 cups. There was a little more honey than what would end up in 2 cups of honey, but I figured a little extra honey won't be too bad. The yeast will go through it if it needs to, otherwise it'll just be a little extra sweet. But that was how I managed to clean out 3 of my bottles of honey that had hardened honey in it, is that I just used a little bit of cider that had been warmed up in the microwave to knock it all loose. I know some people would complain about that because I've now killed any of the enzymes and all that that were in the honey, but I figure some of this honey may be 3 or 4 years old. I don't know how well the enzymes are doing in them at this point, so if I broke down some of the enzymes I did, it'll still, if there's any, I'm still getting from raw honey, I'm getting all the flavoring that I want from it, and if I lose a little bit of the enzymes, I'm not that worried, and it's a good way to use up the leftover honey I have. Beyond that, my kombucha is going, but not much of a scoby yet, but I did have the first few that I did like this. The scoby took me almost 1.5 months, but it was cold, and right now we are sitting at 59 degrees down here, which with the heating pad, that should be enough, but I don't know. Usually we've only got 3 or 4 days, so if I haven't seen anything after a week or more of at least something growing on there, then maybe I've done something wrong. Otherwise, as I figure if it could take 3 to 4 weeks for a scoby to go. I hope I'm saying that right. I've heard it several different ways, but that's at least how I'm saying it. So hopefully in the next month I will have a scoby and can start brewing kombucha also. So I do have a little bit of cleanup to do still here, but I wanted to show it with the lid off and show that you can somewhat see in there that it has slices of ginger in there instead of the normal chunks that I make. But I think the slices will have more surface area for more of the juices to get out into the cider, so it should have a better ginger flavor. And since the ginger cider is one of my favorites, that's what I'm going for, and we'll see from there. But that's what I was able to get done tonight. Hopefully tomorrow I'll get some more bottled and maybe another gallon or two started that I'll be able to rack in 3 to 4 weeks, especially if I'm able to keep going like this. So that's all for tonight.